Okay, welcome to the purpose of this book. David G. and David G. We are picking up tonight on page 130. We're in the family afterward. In the first full paragraph. Should we just dive right in, David? Pick up
Yes,
where we
sir.
left off? All right, let's
Yes.
do this. Here we go. 130, first full paragraph. Those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. We have come to believe He would like us to keep our head in the clouds with Him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. That is where our fellow travelers are, and that is where our work must be done. These are the realities for us. We have found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness.
Nothing heavy. Okay. Excuse me. Bill's writing here. Those of us who spent much time in the world of the spiritual make believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. And this reminds me that June asked me a while back to find out where the reference of dreaming that I'm asleep, dreaming I'm awake. And I did a small amount of due diligence. I didn't do enough of it because I didn't find who that who the author of that was. But it's in a Mark Houston tape. That's where I stole it from. I will give credit where credit is due. So I would just have to find that. And I tried Googling it, it didn't come up. So I'll keep searching, June. But that's what the statement is saying, is that I'm asleep dreaming I'm awake. And I've been asleep dreaming I'm awake most of my life. But even in recovery, I could be asleep dreaming I'm awake. If I'm not practicing the principles in all my affairs, then I'm still asleep dreaming I'm awake. And the result of my life is nil. Then it goes on and says, the dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose. What is that great sense of purpose? Helping others. When I am helping others, when I'm sponsoring people, being a spiritual guide in their lives, taking them through the work, going to meetings, taking on a service position, working with welcoming others, making my approach, all the things that Bill talks about in the big book, that is a sense of purpose. And if you remember, and I'm going to do a couple references back to the bedevilments on page 52 in the second paragraph, that one in the middle one of the bedevilments is uselessness. I always felt useless. I always felt useless until I got recovered, past tense, recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. Then it says, accompanied by a growing consciousness of a power of God in our lives, have come to believe He would like us to keep our heads in the our heads in the clouds with Him, but our feet ought to be firmly placed on earth. So, keeping my heads in this pink cloud is good, as long as I keep my feet properly placed on the ground, meaning doing this work, meaning doing the 12 steps. So being vertical relationship with God, but a horizontal relationship with others, right? So that's vertical with God, but horizontal with others. And there's a reference too, if we go back to page 87 in the chapter 2 action, the very first top of the paragraph there, we talk about this inspirational, occasional inspiration. I'm going to read that paragraph. Top of the page 87, into action. What used to be a hunch or an occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we're going to be inspired at all times. We may pay for this presumptuous in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. So having a God consciousness, like actually, if I recover, I'm going to have a sixth sense. I'm going to have this spiritual sense in my life. So that is the result of working the steps. It's not something I can pull off on my own power. Um, and then it says later in the paragraph, that is where our fellow travelers are. So that's where you guys are. And that is where our work must, circle the word must. There's a must in the big book. There's about 149 of them, or any reference to a word must. This must be done. These are the realities of us. So real life experiences. We have found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and I circle the word here, and a life of sane and happy usefulness. Again, just the opposite of bedevilment. So We got the bedevilments on page 52. We got the promises on page 83 and 84, 31 short pages later. The bedevilments are gone because of the work that we do in the steps. As long as I have my list of all the people I'm going to make amends to, I'm actively doing my amends and I'm actively living in the disciplines of 10, 11, and 12. Then I will get the results of a life of sane and happy usefulness.
Hmm. Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts here to underscore what David already said. Second sentence, this dream world. So this sort of, fantastical idea, the spiritual make-believe, Bill's being a little sort of patronizing there about how we might have used to sort of think about things. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose. David mentioned, the sort of the opposite of the uselessness and the bedevilments, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives, which is fundamentally everything we're trying to achieve here. Right? If I am powerless, I've got to find some power. And that power's got to come from something bigger than me and bigger than David and bigger than everybody here in this study tonight. I need a spiritual greater than human power that's going to solve all my problems. It goes on to say, we've come to believe he would like us to keep our heads in the cloud with him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. And it's a statement, and ask why. Well, why is that? Well, it's because that's where our fellow travelers are, down here on earth. And that's where our work must be done. So I keep my ideals spiritual and godlike. I can keep my thinking, my feeling, my beliefs godlike. I am not God, but I can aspire to be godlike because remember, as his agent, I'm seeking to understand what God wants me to do on his behalf. So if I want to do that, I have to be thinking in the way that he wants to direct me, and I want to try to be like him. Again, not omnipotent, not omniscient, just seeking to help all the kids. And how do I go about doing that is really what I mean when I'm saying thinking godlike. And these are the realities for us. So this is how we are to exist. This is how we're supposed to go through our days. And the last part, I think, is a really, really clever and sort of touching sentence, too. We've found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness. So think about how Bill bookended this paragraph. At the beginning, he said, those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make believe eventually seen the childishness of it. So he's saying the way we used to try to carry on is silly, right? And then here at the end, it's saying that we can have this powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness. What I believe he's suggesting here is that we can be really exuberant. We can be really passionate. We can be really outspoken and out in action in our agency on behalf of God. And that's okay. We were chatting with Paul before. He said he's got all this zeal. We can have a bunch of zeal and be euphoric and eccentric about it. And just because we carry on this way and we're bubbly and overflowing with the Spirit of God doesn't mean that we're not sane, right? And happy and useful, right? Again, I'm not Christian, but neither is David. But we love that expression with Chris R. talks about being a sunbeam for Jesus, right? And again, whatever, name your deity, but it's okay. Listen, I am full of faith. I don't apologize for my God. The book recommends that, and my experience has shown out that I don't have to apologize for my God either. I can be overflowing and effervescent and bubbling over with spirituality, and it doesn't mean that I'm not sound in my thinking, feeling, and beliefs, right? I can be giddy and I can be practical at the same time. Second paragraph. One more suggestion. I bet there's going to be more than one, but one more right here. Whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. They can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, though the head of the house still fails somewhat in practicing them. Nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts a sane spiritual program. making a better practical use of it. No? Okay.
Nothing. So when I read one more suggestion, like David said, yeah, pretty sure there's going to be more than one. First full sentence there: whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. So they're talking about read the book, study the book. Go ahead, pick up the book, because where else are we going to find these principles? And the principles that he's talking about there are the 12 steps. That's what we're talking about. These are our principles. We don't have principles to our principles that I'm aware of. Bill never wrote them anywhere. So I mean, I used to think that, the first step was either honesty or admission, but I stopped doing that because it wasn't printed anywhere in the big book. So if I was going to be true and be a big book thumper, then I'm not going to come up with principles for the principles. So there are 12 principles. But what comes to my mind is, am I a spiritual being having a spiritual experience, or am I a human being having a spiritual experience? I mean, yes. Yes, both. I am both, and I fall down quite often. But I have a conscious contact with the power greater than myself today, and I have running buddies in this program. I have a lot of people in my life today, and I have a sponsor who knows he's my sponsor, and I can reach out to those people. And I have a 10 step that I can do, and I have an evening review at 11, and then upon awakening in the morning, I do that. So, and I sponsor a lot of people. So I am not alone. What we have done is, when I first came in, I was immediately someone triaged me, told me what I suffered from, and then it became a we, because they approached me and they told me what was wrong with me, and they told me what the guaranteed solution is. So then it says, back to the book: they can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, though the head of the house still fails somewhat in practicing them. Nothing will help a man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as a wife who adopts the same spiritual program, making a better practical use of it. All I can say about that is, I've been married for over 34 years. I've been sober over 25 years. My wife is a God of her own understanding and a great relationship with her creator. It's not the same God as I have, I don't think. I'm not sure. We really sometimes have that discussion, but I still get to be a demonstration. And the only way I can be a demonstration is I don't climb to the top of the mountaintop and tell her what she's doing right or doing wrong. I am trying to practice these principles in all my affairs. And the hardest place to do that, as we're reading these chapters, is to the wives, the family afterward, and at work to the employers. So those are the places that I have the biggest challenges in my life. But I'm trying to be an example. I'm trying to be a demonstration, not only to my wife, to my kids, but everybody can, because I am an agent of God. Just like the rest of us are, who's recovered and who's doing this work, we're agents of God. So I'm trying to carry this message. The message is that we all can get well. And I'm talking about the spiritual malady part, and the untreated part is, I don't live that way today. As long as I stay connected, as long as I do the musts in the big book, the must, the have tos, and the had tos, I don't suffer from this disease any longer. And I have wonderful relationships with everybody I come in contact with. Sometimes I have to pinch myself to think that I have lived two lives in one. And think about it, if that's your truth too, that we've lived two lives in one.
Thanks. Abby, any chance you have sane? Come on in.
Sane is mentally sound, having a rational mind.
Thank you. Yeah, I chatted Abby and asked her to grab that one because I had it noted here. We've got it in back-to-back paragraphs here. Same. And if you haven't heard us talk about this before, we want to be clear. So the word and the idea of sanity is used a couple of different ways in the big book. Notably, the word sanity, right, which is the sort of the noun version, or no, not the noun version, because yeah, sanity is the noun and sane is the adjective. So sanity in the second step, right, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. If you're unclear about this, what that is a reference to is my insane thinking, and I'll speak in terms of alcoholism, my insane thinking about what happens if I pick up the next drink in my unrecovered state. In my unrecovered state, I have an insane perspective on alcohol that I think, despite what's happened in the past, when I pick up a drink again, it's going to be different this time. I'm not going to drink too much. I'm going to have the 2 drinks. I'm not going to get in trouble. The restoration to sanity that's described in the second step is specifically about my thinking about drinking. It's not about any other crazy behavior that I did. And we all did crazy stuff too, right? Here, this use of the word sane is more in line with the definition that Abby used, that gave us rather, that it's about soundness of mind. It's about, you know, on the level, practical, sensical, right? Realistic. So it talks about in the previous paragraph, we found nothing incompatible between this powerful spiritual experience, and I use lots of words to talk about that, being bubbly and excited and effervescent about God, and a life of sane, stable, practical usefulness. And then later on here in the second paragraph, nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent, right? A spiritual tangent, off being an agent of God, right? Again, overflowing and bubbly and full of the Spirit of God. So much as the wife who adopts a sane, stable, right, spiritual program, making a better practical use of it. So what is Bill saying here? Bill's saying, I'm being a sunbeam. I won't say for Jesus because we're all sort of different here, right? I'm out being a sunbeam for God as I understand him. And I'm going crazy and I'm sponsoring guys and I'm going to meetings and I'm going to treatment. And I'm going. And this says, it's great then if my partner can come in and join me on the spiritual path, but their experience might be sane and stable, maybe a little yin to my yang. I'll be the crazy and she'll be the rock, right? This is sort of an idea that's being espoused. And this is sort of apropos of nothing. I'll be interested to take a closer look at this. What are the number of suggestions, whether stated as suggestions or implicit, in the chapter to wives and the family afterward? I think there's a lot more in the chapter to wives. And stylistically, Bill seems to be a little gentler in this chapter. He's much more heavy-handed in the chapter to wives, sort of being like, give your husband a break, ignore him when he's being a jerk. Yeah, don't get upset if he drinks again, right? All these really tough asks. And there's some of them here, but I feel like Bill's a little more gentler, sort of in round 2 of let's ask the family to put up with all of our nonsense, you know? Next paragraph. There will be other profound changes in the household. Liquor incapacitated father for so many years that mother became head of the house. She met these responsibilities gallantly. By force of circumstances, she was often obliged to treat father as a sick or wayward child. Even when he wanted to assert himself, he could not, for his drinking placed him constantly in the wrong. Mother made all the plans and gave the directions. When sober, father usually obeyed. Thus, mother, through no fault of her own, became accustomed to wearing the family trousers. Father, coming suddenly to life again, often begins to assert himself. This means trouble, unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. So obviously, you have anything, Abs? No?
No, I
Oh,
do.
go ahead.
I have gallantly, which is bravely or courageously, and wayward, which is unmanageable.
So I just want to say, this is, you know, some sections of the big book more than others feel dated. This one doesn't recognize the shift in gender and spousal roles in the modern day of recovery, right? There's a father and head of the house, a mother taken on, right? This is not the life that most of us are living today, right? Most of us are in all sorts of different sort of relationships, but there's a lot more equality and concept. The head of the household is a little dated and he's and hers and all that. So let's not, you know, let's not get lost in sort of the old fashioned language. What is really the point that Bill's talking about here? So, you know, I think in a marriage, certainly the marriage I've got going on here, we strive to be equals. We strive to both be doing our part, whether it's taking care of the house, whether it's earning money, whether it's being strong there for each other, all these things that we are to bring to a relationship. And what's being illustrated here is this was unequal. right? The alcoholic was not pulling their weight in really any part of the relationship as a spouse of the family. Very, very lopsided. So the other takes over this parental role. How many of you guys experience that with your spouses? I bet many, right? Some of you may have alcoholic spouses. You guys were out there alcoholic or addicted together. Those roles kind of shifted around like crazy. But what Bill's talking about here is we get so incapacitated that we burden our partner, our spouse, with taking care of everything, right? The house, the income, the kids, the emotional strength, everything. And then as we start to get better, we're like, okay, well, I don't want to be patronized to anymore. I'm not a little kid. You don't have to talk to me like that. You don't have to treat me like that. I'm a grown man. Okay, I know I used to drink too much. I know I was partying, I was running around, but now it's different. I mean, it's how can there not be some friction there, right? So again, and we've had recommendations from Bill in this chapter and the one before that suggests if we can all just sort of take a deep breath, come admitting our own faults, know we're trying to work towards better things, that we can get through this together. So to me, this experience that Bill's describing here feels very much really like my practice in the 10th step. I caught something. I was in the wrong. I need to write it. And then I need to really work to ensure it doesn't happen again. It's not acceptable for me to keep acting in the same faults and defects, right? Okay, I screwed up. Let's get it right. Let's admit it. In this case, maybe to my spouse, and then let's figure out how together not let it happen again.
Yeah, in the first sentence there'll be other profound changes in the household. So my notes on that is there's going to be a quality change in my house, and there's going to be an emotional change in my house, right? So those things are going to take place if I am a recovered alcoholic. And then it says liquor incapacitated father. So this is Captain Obvious here. For so many years, that mother became the head of the house. And then here's the principle of success, because she's already done this and acquired this. She met these responsibilities gallantly, bravely. This, I need to do this equally now. This is the principle of success that I'm looking at when I read this. And David just brought it up. Bill's a little bit intolerant, or not intolerant, just a little bit in your face in the chapter 2 wives about how the spouse should behave, and a little bit less so in this chapter here. But the bottom line here is if I read this chapter as though if it's directed to me, this is my responsibility to meet these things responsibly and bravely or gallantly here. I have to take this role if I'm going to be a part of instead of apart from, because I've been apart from everything. Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, the two fellowship that I belong to allowed me to feel a part of, which I had never felt my entire life. Ever since I can remember as a child, I never felt included or a part of anywhere. No one's fault. That's the malady. But when the malady was removed, I recovered spiritually, mentally, and physically, which allowed me to feel a part of. And it started in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous. Then it transfers over to my home, my job, the grocery store, the bank, traffic, relationships with others, neighbors, and all these other things, because I'm trying to practice these principles on my affairs. And I'm awake, not I'm asleep. I'm not asleep dreaming, I'm awake. I actually have a relationship with power. So back to the text. I'm going to skip over to the next page on top of 131. And 3/4 through that page, it talks about father after the comma. Father coming suddenly to life again. So, hello, wake up, buddy. Often begins to assert himself. This means trouble. Oh, Bill's giving us a warning. Unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. We read about this earlier in the chapter on page 127 in the third paragraph. If you guys would like to bounce with me and go back a few pages in the big book into the third paragraph. And these are steps 10, 11, and 12 that I'm going to discuss here in this third paragraph. As each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to the others, he lays a basis of helpful discussion. Helpful discussion. Key. These family talks will be constructive. Boy, I love this language here. If they can be carried out without, these are my directions: heated argument, self pity, self justification, or resentful criticism. Little by little, mother and children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. Giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. Bill, throughout the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, inserts things that we need to pay attention to. And then later in the book, he'll bring it up again. And that means really pay attention. And then sometimes he'll bring it up a third time, a fourth time, and a fifth time if we're really looking for it. And it's in there, I promise you. I'm not going to go through another example because I want to stay on point here. But this is the second time in a couple pages he's talking about the same exact thing, that I don't need to be, that we need to have equal partnership in our family, that I do not need to have, if I'm have a heated argument full of self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. That is not how to have a discussion. That's not how to have a relationship. And if I'm really practicing these steps in my life, I won't have those things. And then I can have a friendly agreement about them. Friendly. That we have them today. That's I'm still like amazed that we have them today. Like again, I have these out of body experiences so many times that wow, dude, you're such a grown up. It's like when did this happen? It's like it wasn't that long ago too, by the way, guys. It really wasn't that long ago that I was acting like a child most of the time because I didn't get my way. So read pages 60 through 63 and see what the real problem of the alcoholic is. That's me. I'm on that pages. That's it.
Okay, we're on 131, first full paragraph. Drinking isolates most homes from the outside world. Father may have laid aside for years all normal activities, clubs, civic duties, sports. When he renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise. The family may feel they hold a mortgage on dad so big that no equity should be left for outsiders. Instead of developing new channels of activity for themselves, mother and children demand that he stay home and make up the deficiency.
I just have the definition for equity, which is surplus value.
Okay.
Thanks, Abby. Yeah, not a lot to add to this paragraph for me. I think what I pick out of this paragraph is if I really have studied this book or if I've read this book, let's put it that way, and I am looking to do my fourth step, and this is things that I will help a new guy go through is point at the things says, I don't know if anyone else had this feeling. Like I didn't hurt anybody else but myself. What resentments could I possibly have when I'm going to do this fourth step? And I actually said that to my sponsor, and he looked at me like, "You are freaking absolutely insane, bro." You know. And when I look at this chapter here, and I look at this page right here, and I look at this paragraph right here, this gives me more wrongs that I've caused. Drinking
Yeah.
isolates most homes from the outside world.
Yeah.
Father has laid aside for years all normal activities. If I just stopped there and not added all these luxuries in here, like club civic duties and sports, and then it says when he renews interest in such things. So I put in there not if, but when I renew these things because I don't know how to balance out my life and I'm going to put these things in front of my family because I'm selfish and self absorbed. A feeling of jealousy may arise. So, again, these are just things for me to look at. There are more wrongs that I've caused. That's all I had there.
Yeah, I don't really have anything much to add there either, other than this paragraph really seems to be a restating of, if you go to page 126, paragraph 2, and we don't have to read it. It's just, this is about how mother and children
Hmm.
are unhappy. They've been neglected, misused, and, we want more of your time. So it's sort of more of the same as he does. Bill's hammering home some ideas. He just had a couple of pages in between talking about it in this case. Next paragraph. At the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact that each will have to yield here and there if the family is going to play an effective part in the new life. Father will necessarily spend much time with other alcoholics, but this activity should be balanced. New acquaintances who know nothing of alcoholism might be made in thoughtful consideration given their needs. The problems of the community might engage attention. Though the family has no religious connections, they may wish to make contact with or take membership in a religious body.
Nothing there, Abby? Okay, sorry, I wasn't looking. So at the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact that each will have to yield here and there. So that's also another principle of success. I need to yield. Again, I don't know what my wife needs to do. It's not my job. You know, she got to have her own experience with it. But my wife seems to be able to do that when I'm not causing a lot of stress, a lot of anger, a lot of tension in my family. She just yields at this. She doesn't have to be defensive. She actually can be, check this word out, vulnerable, because I'm not going to hurt her. I can allow her to be vulnerable. Like to have a relationship where you don't have to be defensive, but you can both be vulnerable to a conversation that's not going to be of hurt feelings. That is like a grown up state that I'm just now living in. And it feels really good just to be vulnerable. Um, and then it says, yield here and there if the family is going to play an effective part in the new life. So, yeah, again, I circle the word new because this is a new life. We live in two lives in one. I haven't experienced this life yet. This life continues to get better as long as I make all my amends, as long as I was honest and thorough on my four steps, as long as I live in the disciplines of 10 and 11 and 12, I'm going to have a new life. That's just the promise of the big book. And we've read that over and over and over again in this book. But this activity should be balanced. That's a must. Should be is a must. Should be is a must. We must have a balance here. New acquaintances, again, new acquaintances who know nothing of alcoholism might be made in thoughtful consideration given their needs. I got to practice compassion here. This is another thing that I'm not accustomed to. I am more of selfish and self-centered, so I have to practice some compassion. The problem of the community might engage attention, though the family has no religious connections. They may wish to make contact with or take membership in a religious body. So if I do that, I actually can get involved because guess what I've learned because of the 12 traditions and how to be a part of a group. I can also do that at a church or a synagogue or a mosque or wherever I'm participating and having a religious body. If I choose to do that, I don't have to do that. And one other thing I want to say about that, a lot of people make a choice to take on that religious body and go to church. And then in place of Alcoholics Anonymous, they end up having what is called untreated alcoholism because of it. I don't go to church or go to synagogue in place of Alcoholics Anonymous. I go with Alcoholics Anonymous and the church, and then I get a unbelievable experience because of it, but not in place of, because I have to treat my alcoholism. And I don't know that I'm not saying that it can't happen for you because it can. I've seen it happen for other people. They go to synagogue, go to church, go to a mosque, and have those experiences. But for me, not in place of church, synagogue, mosque, but along with. That's all I got there.
So, what is Bill really talking about here? He actually uses the word, he's talking about balance, right? How do we start to re-achieve and approximate and get towards balance in the family? So when we're talking about each will have to yield here and there, right? We're trying to achieve balance in the scales. It's got to come from both sides and really not just both spousal sides, but this chapter is about, the entire family. So the kids too. What are we all bringing? How are we all trying to heal together? And father will necessarily spend time with other alcoholics, but this activity should be balanced. But that's a callback to 129, guys. Remember the bottom paragraph? This is such an important one, and I stressed this. You know what? I want to read this again. Let's go back to 129. This is such an important. This is one of the least understood parts of our obligation, how to carry the message in 12-step recovery. Bottom of 129. Though the family does not fully agree with dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head. Even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility towards the family, it is well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics. And here's the key sentence. This is what I'm talking about. During those first days of convalescence, this, helping other alcoholics, is this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. I just started working with a new sponsee. We had our first formal sit down last night, and he's been sober coming up on 2 years. Very end of the book, doing the work, working the steps, sponsored a bunch of guys, but he still got some spiritual sickness and he was very forthcoming about it. And so I think he slept on that and digested it. And this morning he texted me and said, should I still be sponsoring people? Right.
Mm.
And I said, yes, of course, one of the most important things you could do. He said, even though I'm still sick. And the first thing I responded was to join the club, bro. Right? First of all, join the club. And then I said this more than anything from the very beginning, when we all came in, he's got a couple of years under his belt. Yeah, he's still struggling with some stuff, but he was on the streets, literally homeless 2 years ago, right? Now he's got a home and he's got his kids and all this stuff. So the point is, at the beginning, how do we get healthy the fastest? And by the way, we like fast because we love instant gratification. You want to get well in a hurry? Get your ass in gear helping other people. It is never too soon. If you're on day number 2, find the guy who walks in, it's day number 1, and go show him where the coffee is and where to sit in the meeting. It's tremendous help. So,
Can I jump in there real
please,
quick
please,
too?
please, please.
Yeah, because I skipped that sentence because you did such a great job to remind, and also reminded me, follow and necessarily spend much time with other alcoholics. So I was very blessed that my wife never put any limitations on how much time I could spend in an AA meeting. And what would I do is when I first got sober, I was meeting people before meetings and after meetings. So I was gone for a couple hours 5 nights a week, probably, right? And probably because she didn't enjoy my company still, I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you. I'm just guessing. I'm being truthful. I don't think that she really was. And me getting my spiritual food was allowing me to come home and act like an adult and have a really healthy relationship with my wife. And it taught me a lot of stuff. Yeah, so I spent a lot of time, but I know how to balance that out a little bit. My activities should be balanced out, must be balanced out. So now with a couple 24 hours of sobriety, I still sponsor double digit people, but I set times aside we meet with people. I have a guy at Monday night at 5:30. I have one at 10:30 on Zoom, and blah blah. I have all these people all set up all the time, and my wife does not need to remember my schedule. I need to remember my schedule, but she knows I do a Zoom here on Wednesday night, and all these things that we do are all blessings. And this is not in the big book, and you probably heard me say this before. This comes from a good buddy of David and myself, and he said, "God first, sobriety second." And why does sobriety not come before God? Because if I put sobriety before God, then I'm taking credit for my sobriety. So back to my point: God first, sobriety second, my wife third, children fourth, job fifth. And if I keep it in a nice tidy order like that, because what I've ever done in my past, long before I got sober, is anything I put in front of my sobriety, I've lost. Just consider what I'm saying here. And David and I go to treatment centers, and we give talks, and we just stay to the first step all the time. And I say that statement, and I say, please don't leave here, people, and go home and tell your wife she's third on the list of importance. Don't do that. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is for your ears only, till you understand what I'm saying. That comes out, it doesn't come out of this book, but the principle is that it's God first, sobriety second, your wife third. Because I promise you, if you're just like me, anything I put in front of my sobriety, I've always lost. It's just something to consider.
All right. Yeah, let's carry on. Bottom paragraph 131. Alcoholics who have derided religious people will be helped by such contacts. Being possessed of a spiritual experience, the alcoholic will find he has much in common with these people, though he may differ with them on many matters. If he does not argue about religion, he will make new friends and is sure to find new avenues of usefulness and pleasure. He and his family can be a bright spot in such congregations. He may bring new hope and new courage to many a priest, minister, or rabbi who gives his all to minister to our troubled world. We intend the foregoing as a helpful suggestion only. So far as we are concerned, there's nothing obligatory about it. As non-denominational people, we cannot make up others' minds for them. Each individual should consult his own conscience.
I have derided, which is laughed at or ridiculed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. And Paul brought this up before the meeting too, by the way. Abby's using a 1938 Webster's Dictionary here to get these definitions out for us because we want to be true to what Bill's definition was back in the 30s. Because a lot of times by 2025, as we live in this state today, those definitions have changed. So we're trying to stay true to the text, and that's where she's pulling these definitions out of. So it's talked about alcoholics who derided religious people will be helped by such contacts. Being possessed of a spiritual experience, the alcohol will find he has much in common with these people. So I'm always trying to look for similarities today, not differences. I'm trying to, David and I, if David doesn't mind me saying, which I don't think he does, we're both Jewish. And that is a wonderful thing to feel that way and be that way and experience that. But the thing about it is, I'm open minded to whatever God places in my life. And here's my example. So, and I don't, we don't have time to go through the whole story, and maybe sometime I will, but at this point I won't. Someone came into my life almost a year ago who is a Christian and brought a pastor in my life who's also a Christian. I've been to his church because I built a relationship with him. I've been out to my wife and I've been out to dinner with him and his wife, and they're lovely, lovely people. I'm doing a Bible study with these guys on Sunday mornings from 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I would never have done that ever, ever, ever in my wildest dreams until that moment that God froze the liar in me long enough to say, this is me present in your life. This is what I'm taking you on the path for. These two gentlemen are going to help you with that. And I am not retaining things like I've retained in the big book by any means. I can't tell you anything that we even say, but I feel this common this camaraderie that I'm just tickled to death that these two gentlemen, and they don't live around here. One lives around here, the other one lives in Texas, and we do this thing on Zoom. And it's a spiritual experience that I never thought I would have. And my wife has joined us in the past, and it's just a wonderful experience to have. Yeah, and I had to be open minded to it. I am not as closed minded as I was when I first got sober, or even at 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years. So back to the text on page 132. The first full sentence that says, if he does not argue about religion, he will make new friends and is sure to have new avenues. How am I going to get these new avenues? It's through service. I will find new avenues through service and Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, DA, Al Anon, wherever I can. These would be my new avenues of what? Of uselessness and pleasure. And what will I get the pleasure from? The fellowship. Because I will build a fellowship around me. Being in the spirit of the fellowship is one of the promises in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then there's the fellowship of the spirit on page 164. So there's two fellowships that we're talking about here. So I'll be of service and to be useful, and then build a fellowship around me. Doesn't matter where I'm at. I can do it at work. I can do it at home. I can do it at church or a synagogue, wherever I'm at, temple, wherever I'm at. I can have that same experience. He and his family may be a bright spot in such congregations. It just amazes me how comfortable I am in my own skin, that I can look the world in the eyes if it's a promise to say, you know, I am still a sinner. I still have a lot of their defects of character and shortcomings. But I believe that my God has forgiven me for those things because I do the evening review every night. So I'm not taking that garbage into the next day. So I can have relationships with other people. I'm being as honest as I possibly can. And then he's back to the text. He says, he may bring new hope and new courage to many priests, ministers, and rabbis. This is the relationship I have with this pastor. When I share my experience with working with others, he listens intently. Who gives and then we attend the foregoing as a helpful suggestion. So far as we're concerned, there is nothing obligatory about it. As non-denominational people, we don't force our God on anyone. God of our own understanding. AA doesn't have a God. God of your own understanding, whatever that is. And then it says the individual should consult his own conscience, a higher power. The thing is, the promise, that's a promise. And there's also Rule 62, not to take yourself so seriously. Like, I'm not taking myself so seriously today, that I get to have my own experience with my own creator, and you get to have one too. And by the way, one last thing I'll say here, which is usually the biggest lie in a meeting ever, is that if your God isn't big enough for you, you can borrow mine because he's big enough for me.
So you know what this paragraph says to me, guys? This, to me, reeks of tradition 10. In the long form, this is on page 565, but I'll read it to you guys. No AA group or member should ever, in such a way as to implicate AA, express any opinion on outside controversial issues, particularly those of politics, alcohol reform, or sectarian religion. The Alcoholics Anonymous groups oppose no one. Concerning such matters, they can express no views whatsoever. No AA group or member, right? What is the message here? This talks about if he does not argue about religion, right? God saved my life for one reason: to be his agent and to be in the life-saving business. If I am more bubbly and effervescent and fundamental in my thinking about religion or about politics or about anything else that somebody else could have a difference of opinion on, what is the likelihood that I could turn somebody off from coming to me for help? We're in a really wild time. I can only speak about my experience in the United States, where politics are very polarized right now, right? A lot of strong differences of opinion. And it's not a right or wrong. I'm just stating there's some very different thinking right now. But it's my responsibility when I walk into, not only when I walk into a meeting or a group, to check that shit at the door, but I cannot, as a known member of recovery, be outspoken on controversial issues, even in my personal life. It doesn't mean I might not have those opinions. I have sat through fifth steps with sponsees who have very different political ideas than I had, very different. And I just sat there and I listened. Thought, man, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Didn't matter. Didn't matter. In recovery, it just is what it is, right? What if I was wearing, the t-shirts or the hats or, other symbols or language of a particular, religion or political stance, and someone was dying of drug addiction and they wanted to come for me to me for help, but they felt they couldn't because I might not accept them. This is a crisis in recovery today, guys, right? There is no opportunity for me to bring controversy into recovery if I don't create controversy in my personal life. Again, I can have all my opinions. I must be extremely judicious about how I represent them. You got good friends, you got a spouse that loves to have spirited debates, great. Do it in your home. Do it among your buddies. David and I talk politics sometimes, right? We don't post on Facebook, right? We don't wear the stuff in meetings. We don't do any of that. What I'm wearing is my spiritual cloak that was given to me by God. I cannot let any of these other ideas preclude me from being of help to someone crawling on their hands and knees because they're dying from any of our diseases. Please understand this, guys. Please remember that 10th tradition. No AA group or member should ever, in such a way as to implicate AA or whatever your fellowship is. When you are a member, this doesn't mean on official group business as a member. It means as a member, I'm always a member. And therefore, anything I put out is always in play in the world. All right? Carry that with you, guys. Next time you want to say wild things out in the public space. Easy with that social media stuff, guys. Easy. Be a lurker like me. I don't post anything except pictures of my beautiful dogs. That's all I'm going to say about that paragraph. Okay, first full paragraph on 132. We've been speaking to you of serious, sometimes tragic things. We have been dealing with alcohol in its worst aspect, but we aren't a glum lot. There's your glum lot reference, guys, if you've been looking for it all these years. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. When we see a man sinking into the mire that is alcoholism, we give him first aid and place what we have at his disposal. For his sake, we do recount and almost relive the horrors of our past. But those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them.
I have mire, which is swamp, slimy oil, or mud.
A lot in this paragraph here, guys. So, but
Take
I'll
your
try to be
time.
brief. Okay, all right.
Yeah, we got
So,
time. We got
okay.
7 minutes. That's a long time.
We have been speaking to you of serious, sometimes tragic things. That I'm not a low bottom drunk. Everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous in 1935, for the most part, was a low bottom drunk. You wouldn't even be invited to a meeting unless you were a low bottom drunk. I am in the middle of the road, but I am an alcoholic because I say so, because when I drink, I break out in craving. When I stop, I cannot stop. And the greater part of this illness is my life is unmanageable. And I can't remove any of those things on my own power. None. So I have been blessed from a God of my own understanding that the obsession has been removed by the work of the steps, the bedevilments, and the unmanageability in my life does not live there any longer. So I am armed with the facts about this book. I am armed with the facts about this disease, and I am armed with the facts about the solution. So that these people who are serious and sometimes tragic things in their life, I can give them what was given to me, which was hope. And hope is described to me as a vision beyond my present circumstances. What I was hopeless. Hope is a vision beyond my present circumstances. So we've been dealing with alcohol in its worst aspect, real drunk, but we're not a glum lot. So if I was a glum lot, and David just pointed out, if you're looking for that statement, here it is in the big book. I don't go to the tables complaining about, and David did a great job of showing us what the 10th tradition looks like here. And it talks about it in this paragraph too. Indulge in citicism, the state of the nation. We've been to meetings, David and I have. During COVID, we went to a couple meetings, and people wore political shirts, and it wasn't our home group, so we didn't take the guy aside and put our arm around him and tell him that it's not appropriate. We just let it be. But we both rolled our eyes when we saw it. But I don't go to the tables complaining about my wife or world events. I just don't do those things. Glum lot. I am not a glum lot. I have been blessed by the Spirit of God. I'm living in the world of the Spirit. David brought this up twice today. I'm going to bring it up for the third time. Sunbeams of Jesus. Yeah, you bet your butt. You bet your butt. I am excited about sobriety. When David and I go to treatment centers, people tell us things, and I'm not patting myself in the back. I'm not coming from a mountaintop. I'm just saying people said they never heard anything explained to us this way before, because we're just coming out of the book, but we're breaking it down to teach them what the first step is. Because if I don't have a strong foundation, well, I'm not going to do the rest of this work. So we ask them to consider if they're real alcoholics. So we're not a glum lot because we're excited about what our lives look like today. And they get better all the time because I have a relationship with power today. I have a relationship with the fellowship today. I have a relationship with service today. And it says, if the newcomer can see no joy or fun or resistance, they wouldn't want it. So if I'm just a bump on the log, why would you be attracted to me? And then it says next sentence is, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. That is a must. We must enjoy life. And how do we get to that? By working these steps in our life, by helping others, getting outside of myself. We try not to indulge in cynicism of the state of the nation, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. When we see a man sinking in the mire, that is alcoholism. We give them first aid. That's his approach reference. I approach them when they're sinking in the mire, and I give them first aid. I qualify them. I give them hope. I take them through this work, and then it says what we have at first aid in place, and what we have at his disposal. What we have at my disposal, our disposal, is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where is the treasure map to the treasure. So then it says, for his sake, we do not recount and almost relive the horrors of the past, we do, I'm sorry, recount. And if we read the first paragraph in Working with Others, it talks about having this long talk, and I'm paraphrasing here. Learn all you can about them. Go ahead. I got a guy with 5 years that's never gone through the work before, and he's able to stay sober, and his life is better. Don't get me wrong, but it's not what he wants. What I have, and he wants what David has, and he wants what you guys have. So I said, "Would you be interested in me to take you through this work?" And he said, "Yeah." So we do that every week, and his experience today is he's learning about the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's learning about the steps in his life because he wants to have a relationship with God the way it was intended to have one, and not be blocked by pomp and circumstance. But then it says, but those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them. We can only carry the message. We cannot carry the alcoholic. You know, David gave an example today, and I've had this experience many times where people say, "Will you help me with my finances? Will you do that? Will you do the balance my budget?" No, no, I can't do that. I'm not saying you can't do that. You can do whatever you want to do. I just not going to do that because I'm not a professional in that realm, in that world. You know, my wife and I come together and we find out those things. We have a financial guide and all that stuff like that. But I'm not a professional there. What I am is I'm an agent of God, and I try to carry this message. And one last thing I want to talk about here is that sentence in the middle of the paragraph that says, "We absolutely insist on enjoying life." And if you want to make yourself a note, this is a kind of a humorous part of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you go from 16 lines up from the bottom of the page, you will connect to that line there. We are absolutely insistent on enjoying life. And if you start at the top of the page and you go down 16 lines, you will also land on, "We will absolutely insist on enjoying life."
Hmm.
And if you go from the left of that sentence there, want to, we, the first word, if you go 3 words to the left or 3 words to the right, you're going to find right bullseye in the middle of the page, "We absolutely insist on enjoying life." 16 lines up, 16 lines down, 3 lines left, 3 lines to the right. It's a bullseye. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. That's all I got.
Scott called that out in the chat too. Bullseye in that, right? That's what this thing is all about. That's what
Yeah.
this thing is all about. I didn't get better to be bummed out. I didn't get better to be an Eeyore sitting in a meeting. So when a newcomer comes in and I'm like, man, this guy's been sober 20 years, but he's moping around like his life is meaningless and he's no, no. I am supposed to be at peace. I am supposed to be energized. I am supposed to be this agent of God out doing his duty. I'm going to still have to deal with life. I am going to be sad. Stuff is going to happen. I just went for a MRI on my stupid neck today because my entire body's falling apart. But it's okay. It's okay. I could be 6 feet underground. Okay, so I got a bum neck. I'm alive. By all rights, I could have been dead. This is the enthusiasm David's talking about when we go to treatment. We love it because every time we go, the people always give us, and again, we're not doing anything magical. Everybody gives us compliments about how well we explain it out of the first step out of the book. We're coming straight out of the book. We're not doing anything crazy. We're literally reading the book and just turning it into modern language. And the other thing we always hear from the people in treatment is like, man, you guys have so much enthusiasm. That is authentic. You guys are here with us, a lot of you guys every week. You know how fired up we get. I'm talking about this a lot today, right? Being full of this energy and the spirit and all this. We're not faking this. I know you guys aren't when you get riled up and talk about this too. This is the spirit of God because our lives have been saved. This is how I'm supposed to live my life, right? The low spots, the trials are going to come. I get through it with God and all you guys because I have a well sewn and developed spiritual suit of armor. And we do this shoulder to shoulder. We do this together. We go into battle together. This is all about us, right? All as equal agents of God. All right, that's the top of the hour.